Brian, good to talk to you. If I could take you back to last weekend and get your thoughts on the Scottish Cup game at Ibrox. A fantastic result, perhaps somewhat overshadowed by what happened at the end of the game. What is your thoughts on that, looking back a few days later?
Well, it was a great outcome, and every Celtic supporter celebrated with it. And it is unfortunate that the events after the game have, to some extent, detracted or overshadowed the actual result and the fantastic spirit and resilience that our players showed in achieving it, and also, as usual, the management skills of Martin and his team. My response very much is that I was disappointed, frankly, by the comments of the Chief Constable, because as she presumably knows, Celtic work very closely with Police Scotland. We respect the role of the Safety Advisory Group, and when there is evidence of unacceptable behaviours, we act against both individuals and groups, and all of that is well on the record. And I think that measuring responses by condemnatory statements isn't really very accurate. That if this could be resolved by statements of condemnation, it would have been resolved decades ago. And really, it's actions that matter, and the way that we as a club handle these experiences, and the way others handle these experiences. So I think if you're going to ask for condemnation, you have to be more specific. And there are certainly things which I would happily condemn and regret. But probably the highest profile aspect of this was after the penalty went in and Celtic had won. And what you had there was a euphoric response from our supporters. It's not uncommon. In fact, it's happened on quite numerous occasions this season alone in Scottish football, where you have an overspill onto the pitch, and that in itself does not normally draw expressions of condemnation. And therefore, what I would say about that is that I welcome the SFA's intention to have a full inquiry. So let's look at the evidence. If there's evidence of violence, if there's evidence of threats of violence, then of course I'll condemn that. But let's look at the evidence before we create maybe a false narrative.
Yeah, there's also been concern amongst Celtic supporters about their own access to the stadium and how that was arranged. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, well, again, that will be part of this inquiry by the SFA, and again, I welcome that. We met this week with the Celtic Supporters Association, a well-established, well-respected organisation which doesn't raise issues lightly, and they had real concerns about the access to the Broomloan stand, the departure from previous procedures which they believed had worked well, and a genuine concern about the safety of supporters. Now again, we didn't rush out a statement on that because we think the way to address that is through discussion with the authorities, again an evidence-based approach leading to conclusions about what did go right and what did go wrong, and lessons to be learned from it. But we take that very seriously, and I can assure you that there were people with a lot of experience of attending these games who had genuine concerns for the safety of supporters.
Leaving last weekend aside then, if I can talk to you about a separate matter, but still to do with supporters, you've spoken to me recently about your hope that agreement, common ground, if you like, could be reached that would allow for a full capacity stadium getting behind the team. And that involves, of course, the Green Brigade potentially getting back in. You've said that's what you want. What has the club done in recent weeks then in order to try and achieve this?
Well, if I can just go through the process. We met with the Green Brigade. It was clear that the purpose of that meeting was to have a shared approach which allowed us to go to Glasgow City Council Safety Advisory Group and to advocate for the group's return. That meeting of the Safety Advisory Group took place about 3 weeks ago. Celtic made that case, and Police Scotland said they were not really prepared to go along with it. And the two grounds for that: one was they said that the members of the Green Brigade had continued to attend most games in defiance of the suspensions, So in that respect, nothing had really changed, but also that behaviours had not changed, and particularly behaviours towards the police and stewarding. Now I'm just reporting that as what the position of Police Scotland was, which also became the position of the Safety Advisory Group. We met again this week with the Green Brigade, explained this to them to be the position, and essentially that the conclusion of that meeting of the Safety Advisory Group was that there were conditions set which would begin again to create the pathway for the return of the full section. Now, we've communicated these to them. I think that they should accept them. I think if they accept them, then they get into a dialogue about the management of the policing and stewarding of the section, and that, as I say, it creates a pathway to resolving this, certainly until the end of the season, and then let's look at the whole protocol all again. So these have been communicated, both verbally and in writing, and we now await a response. So it is possible, but the ball is very much in their court. They are not unreasonable. They are not draconian conditions. They are the conditions which apply to every other part of the stadium, but it's really up to them. And it's not. This is not unilateral, as the Green Brigade like to claim that it's a club decision whether we let them back in or not. It's not because it is a matter for police, it's a matter for the Safety Advisory Group, and we cannot override the advice that they are given.
But just to clarify something you said there, these set of measures, this isn't a unique set of measures for the Green Brigade, this is a set of measures that all supporters have to comply with, is that what you're saying? Well,
absolutely. I mean, it's basically the terms and conditions of season tickets, which they do accept. It's acceptance of the principle of respecting stewarding and policing arrangements within the section. It's supporting efforts to prevent overcrowding by incursions from elsewhere in the stadium into the section, and there's also a strong concern from the police about anti-police activities, photographing police, pig watch campaigns and so on within the ground. Now, I don't think any of these to say, look, these are unacceptable behaviours, or these are things that can be accepted as the basis of finding a pathway in. I don't think if there's a will to find a solution to this, that these are in any way unreasonable. But as I say, the ball's in their court, and they have not yet come back to us.
Just finally, Brian, let me talk to you about football. There's been a really difficult series of 4 away games that, had they not gone positively for Martin and Sean and the boys, could have potentially derailed the season. How proud are you of the coaching staff and the team that we're still there fighting on all fronts?
I think what they've done is just fantastic. If you go back to the turn of the year, the position we find ourselves in now, that we exited Europe, but we did it with great dignity and a real flourish in Stuttgart. We're in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup after a memorable victory in the face of many injuries, and we're challenged in a very strong, challenging position for the league. So I think most of us at the beginning of January would have thought that would be great. And what Martin, the coaching staff and the players have done in that period commands the utter respect of every Celtic supporter.